So welcome to Mega Man X4. I'm going to be going over where all the items are and all the speed strats for both X and Zero in this video. So it's going to be a little bit lengthy, probably about 2 hours, 1 hour each character, roughly. And I'm just going to go over some of the strats, the tricks, some of the visual cues or audio cues that we go over and what helps us actually get through the game. For anyone who's seen my older runs that I've posted on the YouTube channel, maybe you had questions in regards to what certain tricks were, what certain routes were, and anything like that. I'm going to try to answer all of those questions here. So let's just jump right into it, and we're going to jump into X first. So we're just gonna mash through this. Now what I do with X here is, if you watch the inputs, is I immediately hold charge, I dash forward, jump over this, shoot, dash, jump over him, and repeat the dash shot here. And then I hold. Sometimes the inputs here, because you're holding so many buttons, will eat your jumps, but try to hold them as much as you can. And just mash through this. And then here we're not going to need another charge shot until the very end of this ramp. I was a little early on that. If I waited just a half second longer, what would happen is I would actually hit and kill the final Reploid that was there. And additionally, he will not respawn. So I actually did shoot and kill him there, but he respawned because the camera trigger was in the right spot to where he would take damage and also respawn. There was that very bad happy medium that works against us. So here the route is pretty self-explanatory. Just kind of follow the movements and inputs. Here you want to wait until that wall falls down when you go to shoot that charge shot, because if you shoot the bees too early, what's going to happen is it's going to slow you down. You can actually hit the bees and that wall that breaks, the breakable wall, at the same shot, and then just fire one more shot after that, and that would actually get you through that area fastest. Here we're just going to use semi-charge shots and jumps, and hopefully the boss doesn't move. Because we're on the far left, the boss is less likely to move. With Zero, he has a more active tendency to fly and move around because we have to get close. But if done right, this will be the intro boss fight. Now for the fastest strat, you actually want to jump into his body and take the final shot. It'll bring the X to the left screen so the camera has less to pan and just instantly spawns Colonel here. But this is just kind of a casual speedrun strat, so I'm not going over the world record strategies here. So we're just going to mash through all of the text here. And the first level we're going to jump into is Dragoon. Now, because we have to revisit this stage later, we're actually not going to get any of the items that are here. Instead, we're going to opt to get them later on in the route where it's going to be faster for us. So we're just going to go through this level as fast as we possibly can right now. Once again, start by holding charge. Shooting that isn't necessary, but it can be fun to do. This jumping pattern is pretty set for both X and Zero. And that's the first half. So here, for anyone who's very familiar with the game, will know that we have the heart container as well as the armor piece. Because we have to come back for the armor piece because we are unable to get it right now, we are not going to get the heart piece either and save just a little bit of time. and some really bad RNG on these meteors. Jump slash is your best friend here, so try not to do what I did there and get messed up. What's really nice about mashing in this game is all the buttons count, so long as you don't hit triangle or square, you can hold your charge and just mash the top 4 buttons. And you want to try to shoot him in between every one of his attacks. Now this is the most DPS that X can do typically with his Buster, is semi-charge shots. And that's the fight. That fight could have gone a little bit faster if I didn't miss the early shot as well as 1 or 2 shots in the middle of that fight, but that's pretty much how you wanted the fight to go with X. I find that the fight is a little bit more forgiving with X as opposed to Zero. Zero actually can have a faster time because of his Saber Dash trick, but as far as X, because of the lax time in between the semi-charge shots, I find the fight to be just a little bit easier, a little bit more spaced out, a little paced. Makes it not too challenging. Next we're going to jump into Spider. Spider's where we're going to get our first armor piece. There is a little bit of manipulation in the fish boy at the end here. It doesn't always work, but there we go. If you do the jumps the way you saw there, there's a chance that the fish can jump and you can just slip under him. If he doesn't, you could just, you know, take the damage of just walking through his body and just continue on through. Just eat the damage here, and it'll make your life a little bit easier. There is a way of getting through that without taking any damage, but it's kind of hard to execute. See, that's an example of a killed enemy that instantly respawns. And just dash in the air here. Switch, air dash. Fire here, and switch back. And if you do it right, unlike what I did there, I'm going to take this just for a safety on this route right now. Just I'm a little bit lower than I wanted it to be. I usually take about 1 to 2 hits less. And we're going to get into Spider. Now Spider is much slower the first time you fight him because you don't have the Nova Strike as well as you don't have the Twin Slasher Blades. So you basically have to do this strictly with Buster shots, but there is a way of making sure you get shots every time. So right now he's not playing very nice. This is the position I like him to be in, because you could stand right underneath him, dash away, and then never get hit by the web. If you have to use the wall, you can hit him as he's rising up. And if done right, he should be low green to early yellow before he goes into phase 2. Stand right here. and that's Spider. Very easy fight. Not really much to say about it right now. It's just a lot of dodging and making sure your shots count. That fight, again, it could have been a little faster if I did not miss those 2 or 3 shots in the early part, because I was expecting him to actually drop lower, about the top of that door's height. And if he does that, you can shoot him, stand underneath him, and then wait for him to throw the web. And his animation cue for that is when you see him hold both hands together and he shakes. He's going to throw out the web. If you hit dash to one side and then jump and shoot him with a charge shot, you won't get hit by the lightning web, and you'll still get your damage in. So if he blocks the wall, that's your strat. If you have the wall available, then you can do what you saw in that fight, where you bounce off the wall once and then you hit him as he's rising up. This level is one of my favorites, simply because of this ride armor. And that's part 1. I got hit off screen, that's funny. Now this first shot coming up, you want to do it in a dash, so you go through the door, like that. This enemy you do not want to kill. Switch. And now there's actually 2 arm canisters here. I'm going to show you where the other one is. This is the other one. So for anyone who's played this game as a kid and used the ultimate armor, you probably remember the big blue shot, the plasma shot. This is the arm upgrade for the plasma shot. So to show it, you get the gold charge and you get that big blue ball right there. This is the one that when you hit with the plasma shot, it'll leave behind this little like series of orbs, depending on how many enemies you hit, that deal dot damage, periodic damage. It's slower actually in the speedrun. It is fun in the casual run. There is one fight in the entire game though that this actually makes trivial, makes it a whole lot easier, and that's the Slash Beast mini boss. That mini boss can actually take 2 shots of the plasma shot and the fight's over. It's literally that fast. However, routinely we go for what we call the quad shot or stock shot, and that's this one. Also notice that the gloves are different color. So this one we get the pink charge, but we get the 4 bullets. And that's going to be important to us for the up and coming route. So what I like to do here is hold dash, jump, and mash. And then 1 fire shot, and we are done with this mini boss. Just that fast. Now Owl can be a bit of a jerk. He can sometimes not play nice, and we have no choice but to deal with it. But we're going to try to get him as much as we possibly can with these charge shots. You can shoot through these bullets here.
No. No, not right now.
That grab is the most dangerous move he can do to you. You should be there. Okay. A couple more shots and we should be able to get this. And we're done. That's Owl. That was actually a decent Owl. Now each of those charge shots for the quad shot or stock shot, however you want to call it, does about as much as your regular fully charged Mega Buster that we had earlier in the game, except you get 4 of them. which means you don't have to sit and recharge as often, so you can get a lot of shots off. And knowing the invuln windows of your enemies will actually allow you to get more damage done DPS wise than using semi-charge shots, which used to do 2 damage. These do, I believe, 3 damage. Whereas the plasma shot, its initial hit, I think, is 4 damage. And then each of the burns, if it actually deals damage, is like 1 or 2 damage. But it's still slower just because the invuln window is actually longer with that. If they didn't give them a longer invulnerability time, it would actually be the superior weapon. But because it does give them a much longer invulnerability window, it's worse. The stock shot actually gives them just as much invuln window as, say, your semi-charge shot. So it allows you to get those damages off a lot faster. This item is the same for X and 0. To make note, the item locations for everything in the game is the same for both X and 0 in this particular game. The only difference is whether or not you're getting X's armor pieces. That is the main and only difference in these routes. See, 0 can skip a lot of the, we'll call them side venturing, that X has to do in order to become more powerful. Ooh, really good claw. Now, I personally, both on X and 0, I suck really bad on Walrus 2, because there is some step counting when it comes to how to get through and stop the birds, the Articunos, as I used to call them as a kid, from screwing up your route. If you don't get damage there, you can actually just flat out skip that. But of course, like I said, I'm a little bad at this area, especially as X. There is a way of skipping the final 2, but if I'm being, once again, very honest, I still have yet to properly practice that. And I always end up having to kill them just to make my life easier. The first one you can actually routinely skip without being much of a problem. I just got hit there, and that invuln frame actually slowed me down. So here what we're going to do is we're going to give him 1 stock shot and then a charge fire on his back. And then what we're going to do is we're going to basically follow him as he's slowly sliding toward us. We're going to just keep hitting him with fire. And if done right, we should take maybe 1 hit, maybe 2 extra after the initial hit that we're forced to eat, and then we're just going to finish this fight. So stock shot, charge fire, and this fight's over. If done wrong, he will slide a second time, which will waste more time. However, you could follow him in the same exact pattern. If done incorrectly, you can just follow him. Also, if you need to use a stock shot, go right ahead and use a stock shot, because you'll still get decent damage. You won't get the same, I think, 4 damage that fire does to him, but you'll still get the 3 damage. Colonel is an interesting fight for X. More so than it would be for 0, because of the way Ice works with him in X's case. was a bad kernel. You could finish him before you run out of ice power, but I had 1 or 2 misses. Now, the way his invuln window works on ice is very... what feels random. Sometimes his invuln window is just a few frames. Sometimes it feels closer to almost a whole second. This game runs on 30 frames a second, which is, you know, just for a reference. So sometimes you can get more damage with each ice block than just the initial hit. The only way to speed up this level on Stingray is to do dash while you're in the air, whether that means you're falling off a ledge or if you're actively jumping. And you want to try to hold down as you do it, except for this jump there. I try to hold a little bit of up and down, jump here and dash. This is the safest route, but admittedly not the fastest. I wait, I jump here, dash, hold down, and now you're through Stingray. If you do the faster route, which is a lot more jumping and mashing, there's a chance that any one of those pitfalls, especially the final one and that final wall, can actually pinch you and you'll just die because you are speeding up the background of the game. Same thing here. And that's the really only main obstacle on Stingray 2. Don't dash here, and you're gonna jump, jump, dash. As soon as you fall off, dash again. Now that health container you can grab if you're, you know, unconfident of your fight with this. If you feel yourself very versed in the fight, then you don't need it. It'll slow you down anyway. In this game, picking up health packs is very laggy. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna try to shoot him when he fires the stingrays at us in his knees. And then try to hit him as he flies by. Just like that. I'm getting beat up on my buttons here. Switch to ice. And that's Stingray. Overall, Stingray is an easy fight. He doesn't get much faster on the refights at all because you use the same strats. The only thing that could help is if he dives less. He acts like Storm Eagle for anyone that's played Mega Man X1 with the whole diving mechanic. So next we're going to go into Slash Beast, and this will be the last boss we get before we revisit Dragoon stage, because now we'll have everything we need in order to get both upgrades. Slash Beast's stage is pretty self-explanatory. You jump from train to train. There's not a whole lot to really go into this. The hardest part are those cannons. If you want to shoot them, you can do what I did there and just have your charge shot ready to go, or you can just honestly jump right over them. Both strategies work. So long as you're not standing when you shoot them, you won't lose too much time. If you just do this, that'll help. But if you're standing and shooting like this, then you're wasting time. But if you're doing it while you're in forward motion, whether in the midst of a dash or a jump, and you just kind of get them, it's not a problem. So this is the mini boss I mentioned earlier about where the plasma shot makes this fight a joke, because you literally throw 2 shots of fully charged plasma shots and the fight's over. What we're going to do here is we're going to use fire to our advantage. And then ice. 1 to 2 fire uppercuts and then 1 shot of ice usually is enough to end that boss. Now if you notice, I used a stock shot on the middle missile just to prevent it from shooting out in the first place while I'm jumping, because you can fall into that pit. The ride armor is slower, but it does save you some health. Just don't slash anything. Use it to power through entirely. If you slash and kill things, especially on the trains, it'll lag your game up and slow you down more, actually. And then just do a hyper jump here and start charging your quad shot. These 4 shots you're gonna use as you exit. So there's the first one. That would have been the second one. There's the third. And that area right there where I was dashing would have been the fourth. But number 3 respawned on me. Remember I mentioned that distance thing? So now we're going to use Ground Hunter, and basically what we're going to do with this is we're going to alternate between fully charged Ground Hunter and non-charged Ground Hunter. And my timing for when to shoot the non-Ground Hunter is the non-charged Ground Hunter is when you get a semi-charge. So like this. Shoot the fully charged, and then you hear just a whooey, and that's your audio cue to when to shoot. And that's Slash Beast. The fully charged shot you want to use for the knockdown portion because it actually does more damage. And then the non-fully charged shot you want to do right as he's standing up to be able to sneak in an extra hit. It's very similar to getting in those cheap shots on Spark Mandrill in Mega Man X1, like after you freeze them. If you shoot them again really fast, you won't get the freeze, but you'll get the damage off. It's the same kind of concept. So here we're actually going to go into Dragoon. Dragoon 1 is the same, we don't care about it. And then it's Dragoon 2 that is where we're interested in. So if we just stand here and jump and hold left and then release fire, we'll actually do the fire uppercut, the Shoryuken, and it'll actually bring us pretty much onto that platform. Immediately switch to Twin Slasher and charge it up. We're gonna go to this corner edge here, dodge this fire of course that's trying to screw me, jump and release. If done right, you won't have to waste an extra second shooting it because you're able to shoot it in air and you'll just hit the wall. Now we have 3 out of 4 pieces for X's armor. Now we just go to escape, and the next level is going to be Mushroom. And the reason why we have to do the revisit now is because we actually need the armor in order to do a couple skips. There's not many skips per se in this game on X or Zero. There's just a few little minor ones. Getting through this section of the staircase is a pain to try to do undamaged. It is doable once you get used to some of the timing. And some of the visual / audio cues, but it's a little bit of a pain in the butt. Switch to fire. I meant to grab that wall there and I didn't. Aww. Sometimes you get screwed by that. And then we're just gonna power through here. And right here, what we're gonna do is I'm gonna jump, release fire, and then hit the R2 trigger. And what that's gonna do is gonna do the Nova Strike, which is our new ultimate ability we got because we got the chest piece. And that's actually going to skip this boss. Now the boss is gonna load in, but notice that the platforms are all messed up now. All I have to do now is just jump out of here. And that's Mushroom 1 skip. There's one more skip coming up. And that's on the elevator coming up later on in the stage. Now X has a little bit of an easier time here. If you mess up this jump, you can use Lightning Web. So if I do this, I can get the same thing as if I did not mess up that jump, which I'll show that on Zero's route, just so you can kind of see. So these stock shots will actually cause very minimal lag if you hit the bottom edge of these. There's a little bit of lag if you hit them center mass, but nowhere near as much as, say, the plasma shot would do, which causes probably the most lag in the game, or Zero's normal jump slash. We're actually going to switch to fire here. And go right into the boss room. So to explain what I did there is, instead of waiting for the elevator to push and break that platform before the final vine shows up, and you have the two big platforms that were on the left and right hand side, I immediately damage boost by hitting that vine to actually go to the right side platform, stand on the edge of it. If I jump and release the charge fire, which again does the Shoryuken, and then I either do an air dash or a Nova Strike, depending as to what your preference is, preferably try to use the air dash rather than Nova Strike like I did there. I did the Nova Strike out of old habit, but you got to try to use the air dash. It works the same way. You'll hit the topmost platform and then just make your way into the boss room. So what's going to happen is you're going to load into that first door, and then you're going to hug the wall, and after about 6 jumps, you're going to hear X like huff every time he does a jump. After about 6 of those jumps, you can then use a dash jump to the far left, and you'll end up in this corner that I'm in right now. If I had saved the Nova Strike, my very first attack against Mushroom would be a Nova Strike, but in this particular case, it's not going to be. So to make up for that damage loss, I'm actually going to use this. Yeah. Really bad setup. If you let the web go off screen, you can shoot immediately, which will be important in one of the final fights later. Still an easy fight overall, but I did mess up a little bit. So you use these platforms right here on the right and left. So you see how they have those little Z notches? What you're going to do is you're going to use on the right side of this particular fight, which will be different in the refights because you don't have this exact layout. You're going to use that orange door, the very first pixel on the left. You're going to put X's foot on there, and then from there you can jump and shoot, and then the web will actually go off screen. Still deal damage to Mushroom, but when Mushroom lands, you can get another cheap shot in him as he's recovering his animation. Very similar to what we did with Slash Beast, how we shot him with the Ground Hunter and then shot him with an uncharged version. We're going to do the same basically thing here. And then on the left side, if you see that leftmost Z notch that's on the left there, we put our foot right in front of that and we do the same thing. Those are your visual cues there, and you'll see a similar visual cue when we go to the refights later. Next up, we have Cyber Peacock, who will be the last of our 8 Mavericks. And his stage is vastly easier compared to Zero's stage, because since he's last, we have everything we need to get through this without taking damage. Specifically, the middle stage of these 3, because you go through 3 test stages. So this stage, the second one, is the easiest for X because it's literally just this. You use 2 soul bodies and you're through the stage. It's literally that easy. Zero has to find another route around, and we'll showcase that later on. Dash under these. Jump, Nova Strike, and then dash jump. It's faster than going through the ladder. Now only X can do that. Zero does not have an option there. However, because of some of the invuln frames, we still have a very fast Peacock route. Just because we'll take damage and we'll go through all of those yellow orbs without actually getting any interaction with them. Just continue dashing here to get that one. Easy as possible. You're gonna jump over this button, so that way this just immediately falls down. And in this one, we're gonna use a visual timing cue. So we're gonna jump ahead. Once the ball is by the purple area, then we can hit that button. Also, moving the screen ahead, for some reason, also speeds up by a few frames, speeds up the orb a little bit. So it just ultimately makes the whole area faster. But Cyberspace 2 is probably the easiest stage in the entire game, arguably. We want Peacock to be in his position right now, but if he's not, like this, then we have Soul Body to make up for it. And you can get 2 hits per Soul Body. Although we have infinite ammo now because we got the helmet. Stand about here and hover. Messed up my positioning. I was a little too far right. If you're a little bit further away from him, just by a couple pixels, when that missile actually tries to go around you, it won't actually make contact with you. It'll actually fly over you and just kind of circle around you a little bit. And because of that, it'll actually delay his next shot by just a few frames, allowing you to just get a little bit more damage in, and he's kind of stuck in animation. But because it's just his fight, it wasn't too impactful, and it didn't matter too much. So now we have Colonel stage. It's an easy stage, but a lot is happening. So there's gonna be a lot of enemies that we're gonna either power through or we're going to kill for the sake of speed. So like here you switch to Twin Slasher. You want to actually dash jump here. If you jump too early, what happens is you'll hit the ceiling like I was doing there, and you want to avoid that. Alright, once again, we're going to need ice, but we'll have a lot more ammo now because of the infinite helmet. Now, the infinite helmet does not extend to charge attacks, it only extends to non-charge attacks. But we will have more than the 16 ice that we see right now. Jump in, ice, and hover. Hit him again, charge, another charge, uncharge. Charge ice. And that's that fight. That fight can actually be done exactly the same way for the most part, with the exception of Colonel's teleport to middle attack in the very first fight, which is what I was trying to emulate. But I have a better Colonel 2 than I do Colonel 1, I guess because his teleport works in my favor. Alright, so here we're actually just going to power through everything. And then right when you get to here, jump and Nova Strike. Switch to Double Cyclone. And I'm going to do a safe strat here where it's a little bit safer in terms of your damage intake. So the first 3 or 4 hits, I'm actually going to hit them with this. And then I'm going to move into Cyclones. And the reason why that is because every time I hit him with Double Cyclone, as you saw, he keeps making more and more of those turrets. So I take the first 4 hits and I hit him with the Stock Shot, which will get some good damage in there and also keep your health from taking hits. And then I move into Double Cyclone. It is a little bit slower, but it is safer. Now, this is the route that I prefer. It is technically slower by about 1 second compared to the lower route, but I personally hate the lower route. Like, despise it. So I go here. It's 1 second slower, but for me it's peace of mind. So this is RN General. This will be probably the most hated fight for Zero. For X, it's kind of easy because of Charge Twin Slasher, being able to go through his entire body and still hit the hitbox.
It's our destiny to fight.
as you saw there. So the charged Twin Slasher can actually hit through his chest and still hit his head if you hit at the right angle. And then a regular Twin Slasher is great just for being able to hover right above his head and just hit him, as you saw. On X, that fight is pretty set in stone, barring maybe Colonel, the General, I'm sorry, himself. But for the most part, that fight is about that easy. So this is the refights. They're all about roughly the same, but we're going to start with Spider, who is not. I'm going to try to get the Nova Kill damage, which is where we do enough damage to him with Twin Slasher. Use a charged Twin Slasher to cause him to lag a little bit, and then we're going to hit him when he's in the tree. Not just yet, though. The next shot I want to mess up my timing. What you want to do is also you want to keep him low enough to where you can knock him off his web. But this will work just fine. There's really no place he can hide. And then from here, I go right, and then I kind of follow this side. This is how I prefer to go through. There is a route where you start with Dragoon, and then go to your left side, and then follow and end with Owl. I'm going to end with Cyber Peacock. And you fight Dragoon very much the same way as you did before. And the stock shot does a good extra amount of damage. You're getting 1 extra damage per shot, so it cuts down the fight quite a bit. So next we have Owl. I'm going to try to alternate between hitting him with stock shots as well as hitting him with the laser. Like that. I was about 1 or 2 cycles slower, but it's okay. Next we're going to move to Walrus, who we're going to fight exactly the same way we did when we fought him before. So we're going to switch to fire. We're going to charge the stock shot to get the 1 shot off. That's all we need. And then we're going to fight him exactly the same way. And the reason why we stock shot him also is because we waste 1 fire to charge the fire. I took a couple extra hits than I wanted, but as you saw, we fight him exactly the same way. Which is fine. I'm going to save those tanks. And this should be all I need for Slash Beast. After Slash Beast, we're gonna go immediately left to Mushroom, and then we're gonna do Stingray and then Peacock. Alright, so these floor, squares here are your reference points. And basically rinse and repeat this and the fight's over. Mushroom is not a hard fight on X. Plain fact, none of the bosses are hard on X because he has a weakness for everyone or an answer to everyone. Zero is a little bit more technical. However, Zero's got a few bags of tricks. He's got some stuff that X can't emulate at all. And we'll get to that as soon as we're done with this run. So Stingray, technically his weakness is ice, but as you saw, we rarely use it. We only use it for when he does the vacuum attack, just to kind of stop him from leaving the screen for so long. Because his freezing animation is so ridiculously long in this game. And that's Stingray. Finally, we have Peacock, and then we move on to Sigma. I opted for a safer route because you do not want to die in these refights. You waste so much time, even if it's just the one boss that you have to do again. Like in this case, we would just have to do Peacock again. Because of the loading animations of having to come into here, load into the door, all of that, you lose so much time, more time than you would realize. At least double the amount of time you would lose if you were in their boss stage and you lost and you just had to go through the one door. You probably lose double that amount of time. And I burnt my Nova Strike there. Good thing they gave it back to us. So, Sigma 1 on X, a joke. You literally two-shot him. So we're going to do 2 charge fires back to back, and we'll move on to Sigma 2. Alright. Hug the wall. Do a short hop. And mash square. and that's Sigma 2. I messed up the positioning on the last one. I held jump just a little too long. You don't need a large jump. All you need is a very short double hop when you're in that position. So if Sigma was to pretend to be on our left here, you don't need to do this large jump. You just need just that. Just that alone, and you'll be able to continually do this and shoot off screen. And also, if you don't move while you're in hover mode, you actually save a little bit more time while you are hovering. It won't run out as fast.
Prepare to become space dust.
Gunner Sigma is easier, but Floor Sigma is not that hard to begin with. Stand here, and this is our position. This is where we live. And you just use the damage boost to reset your airtime. And that's Gunner Sigma. You can actually one-cycle him if he doesn't do the end, which makes him disappear faster. Ooh. We got robbed there. But as you can see, if done right, you won't even need to use the health containers. However, it is good to save them as a just in case for this fight. That's why I opted to grab the health pill when I was doing the refights. So this is the route for X. Unless some new magic optimization happens, this is the end of what will be routing for him, minus maybe some minor tweaking of movement. And then we end time as soon as we hit that square. So I'm going to reset the game, and we're going to get started on Zero's route. Alright, so a couple things to go over with Zero. He completely is a different playstyle from X. Absolutely has zero projectiles. So normally X, if you hit the square button or the triangle button, you would have a slash, or shots rather. Or you could hold it and you would have a charge shot. With Zero, all he has is this. Triangle, as you notice, does not do anything. In the later games, he does have a Z Buster, but in X4, he has, as I said, zero projectiles. Triangle actually will be our specialty button, so whenever we learn special attacks from various bosses, we'll be using Triangle to access those. So for now, this is all we have. However, we can use something called the SDC, Saber Dash Cancel. And the way that works is, when I slash, I can cancel that slash with a dash. And vice versa. So if I go like this, slowly, and then as you get more proficient with it, you can actually get a lot faster with it. So. Now there is a way of going too fast, to where the sword doesn't come out, as you saw there, and you don't want that. You want the sword to at least be able to get somewhat out, otherwise you won't be dealing any damage. So about there is usually a good pattern. This allows us to do a lot of damage early on. Because bosses do not get invulnerability frames until the third slash, and the reason for that is because they intended you to use the triple slash on the ground to get your damage out. So a lot of bosses, with the exception of a few, will not activate their invulnerability timing until the third slash. This allows you to repeatedly hit them with the first slash, dealing immense amounts of damage. Now, unfortunately, the SDC is not as important in X4 as it is in, say, X5. And that's simply because you don't have as much of an opportunity to use it in X4 as opposed to X5. In X6, you can still do the SDC, but there's actually a glitch in that game that allows you to do more damage with just the initial Saber Slash. But if I ever go over an X6 video, I'll explain that there. Now this boss, the dragon boss, can fly more often with Zero, but we'll see what happens. If you can get 4 or 5 slashes on the first time, you should be okay by the end here. Again, just like with X, you can take a damage shot to go into his body and go over to the left side of the screen, allowing this transition to be a little bit faster, but we're doing this just kind of as educational purposes, so we're not going to go with the, you know, super hardcore speedrun strat. Now, another thing to note, since we're early on in the game and it's not much to talk about yet, is Zero will always be a few minutes faster than X, no matter what you do. And it's not because X is slow per se, but the fact that Zero does not have to get a second Colonel fight after the first 4 Mavericks. Instead, there's a cutscene cinematic that plays that is skippable. So you're skipping one entire fight. Additionally, you don't have to revisit any stage at all with Zero. So you save time there. So between those two things alone, Zero will always be faster than X. Just like X though, we are going to start with Magma Dragoon. This is the starting point for both routes no matter what. And it plays out about the same until we get to Dragoon 2. And then there'll be one minor difference that Zero has that X does not do because of routing purposes. So that one change that's going to come up here is we're actually going to get the heart piece, which is technically doable with X also, but it's slower to do it with X because we have to revisit the stage anyway. So what you want to do is just get to the tippy top here, reposition to about there, and then if you do a dash jump all the way to the left, you should just barely hit the ledge, and this works for both X and Zero. That's the one addition that Zero does over X. Other than that, the rest of the level is about the same. As I mentioned earlier, jump slashes are your greatest weapon here. The one thing we're going to do here is we're actually going to try to SDC through Dragoon, and you'll see how that works right. As you see, if done right, you can do very large amounts of damage. Unfortunately, the SDC is really only useful in a few fights, most notably Dragoon and Slash Beast. Those are the 2 fights where you save probably the most time in Zero's route versus X's route, simply because they stay on the ground long enough to be able to do that kind of damage. Next, we're going to go to Peacock, and the reason for this is because of a number difference. Whereas Zero's jump slash, the one where he slashes right in front of him, actually does 3 damage, whereas the Kuenzan, which you get from the Kuenbu, the Kuenbu is the double jump, the slash is called Kuenzan. So this slash does 3 damage, whereas the spin slash that we'll get shortly after this, as far as it is concerned with Peacock, only does 2 damage, making the fight a little bit slower because you're losing 1 damage every slash. This area though is about the same between the two. There is this section coming up right now that I mentioned is different for Zero because he does not have a way to get rid of these. So what we do is we jump slash that one, make it go faster, and this one that's right in front of us is RNG. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. It's not a routing or a global timing thing, it's just literally RNG. And that's basically how we get through that. We cause the top lane to go faster, so that way we can jump around and avoid the middle and bottom lanes as best as we can, except for that one last orb. The final change will be this area coming up here, where we do not have the ability to destroy these. Ooh, that's bad. And we damage boost through those. Minus the part where I got grabbed by the antivirus there. That's basically how the route's supposed to go. There's a very tight window of where you could dash underneath him and then jump. I jumped just a frame too early, and that caused me to actually get hit. You want to limit the amount of times you get hit in this area though, and the reason why is because these buttons will only register if you are not taking damage. Thankfully, it's really only care about it when it comes to the first button. And the same trap. Now, Peacock is a little bit different in terms of how you fight it as well. We do have Peacock's weakness, actually, which is the funny thing. The yellow orbs in the earlier stage do not die to fire, but Peacock does. The orbs in the stage actually die to the Kuenzan, the spin slash I made mention of. But we don't have it because we want to do a little bit of a faster fight here with Peacock. So what I do is I stand here holding up, and anytime he appears on my body or just to my right, I'm going to use fire, but I want him to appear on the wall. Just like with X, I want him to actually hover. He tends to do that more though, the lower his life is, no matter who you're playing as. Like this. And as you notice, you could do a whole lot more damage there when he's in the corner there. So that's Peacock. Ironically, we are now going to go to Mushroom, who actually gives us the Kuenbu Kuenzan. We are actually doing that boss actually third after Peacock. And that has to do again because of damages when it comes to the route. But we need this double jump so that way we can go into the next fight, which would be Owl. Once again, we're doing the stair climb. Unfortunately, however, we cannot skip the mini-boss like we can with X. There's no way to get out of bounds. So we actually have a strat that we use to get through that fight a little bit easier. Because we don't have lightning to actually get through that fight. But we do have fire, and that will actually get us through just fine. So hopefully we don't mess this up here. You don't want to die here simply because you lose a lot of time. But this is what we should try to go for. I'll try to concentrate so you can see. That's the safe route. The harder route, and the more expert route, is you actually take a damage boost off of him to stand on the spikes down below, and then you try to finish him off with another fire attack. Once again, more stairs. And on the up and coming spot, I'm going to show you how with both X and 0, you can jump on top to get that heart piece. Just like that. That works for both. I just showcased the lightning web strat for those that may have ever missed that. So here we do not want to jump slash. We want to SDC, so that way we can kill these with as little lag as possible. We might take a hit here or two though. And I like to use fire here because it causes that minion that you just saw on the middle screen disappear. Dash underneath. And use Rakoa, which is your R2 trigger, your Giga attack, to kill those without using too much lag. We grab this health pill for safety, and we move into the mushroom fight. Now Mushroom, again, we do not have lightning, which is his weakness, just like it would have been for the mini-boss. But because our jump slash does so much damage, we'll be using that for the bulk of our DPS. Two, three, four. And then we wall ride. A little bit of a rougher fight than I wanted it to be. I took one hit extra, but that's about the fight. You use the jump slash to get through as best as you possibly can, and the timing for when to start hitting the wall after he initially jumps up is about 4 slashes. You get the 4 slashes and then you have to start hitting the wall. But now we have Kuen Bu and Kuen Zan, which again is just the spin slashes in the air, and it's activated simply by just pressing slash. So unlike in X6, for anyone that's played that game, where you have single jump and then you slash and you get the normal, and then if you double jump and do the slash, you then get the spin slash, it's not the same here. Here it is completely utterly replaced. So to showcase, if I just hit jump once and then slash, notice I spin. But if I do a double, it's the same. So that's how it works here. And we go through this the same as we did with X. We alternate between dash, jump, and dash while charging our buster to maximize our movement. And now we're going to use the Kuen Bu jump, or the Kuen Zan slash I should say, to try to get through this area a little bit easier. We're still not going to kill this. Take the damage, dash through, and if you're fast enough, you won't die. Let's try that again and not die this time, shall we? That's how it's supposed to be done. And then this fight's easy. Owl, there's a little bit of technicality to him. Now, remember I made mention of how immunity frames worked for a lot of the bosses in the game, where the first and second slash normally don't generate immunity frames because they want you to actually get the third slash off. Owl is one of the ones that is the opposite, where he'll get a shield because he doesn't get the typical iframes of blinking, and flashing like white. Instead, he gets this big green bubble on any hit that he takes practically. However, there is a small coding error with the game where if you hit him with only the third slash, even though he's supposed to get the bubble, what happens is it doesn't really register properly, and you can just take more damage off of him for every frame that your third slash is actually in his hitbox. So we're going to try to use that and alternate between those and the Rakoas, which is again our R2 trigger, to be able to make this fight a lot faster. The R2 trigger is actually his weakness in this fight. So you see what I mean here when I go through the fight about trying to use only the third slash and the Rakoa. And just like that, Owl's done. So if you notice the very first hit that I gave him, he actually took about 2 or 3 hits from the third slash before I jumped over. Now you can actually cancel the third slash with a jump as well, or a dash, and that allows you to actually get behind him faster. If you let the third slash go its full time and revolution, what actually happens is you'll miss the timing to be able to jump over him and get hit by his body, which we don't want to do because we want to be able to hit him with the Rakoa and then a jump slash. So next we're going to go into Stingray, and the reason why we go to Stingray next is because we want the air dash, so that way we can get a little bit faster through a spider stage right after that. But this stage is done exactly the same. The only thing different is how the fight is actually done because we don't have a projectile. So we're not actually going to wall climb to fight Stingray. We're actually just going to use the Kuenzan slash to cheese this fight. As you saw, both stages are exactly the same as they are with X, so you can follow the same exact pattern. The only difference is going to be this fight. And what we're going to do is we're going to try to use the double jump slash in order to kill the Stingrays while still damaging Jet himself. Just like that, by turning into him as we jump slash. And now we SDC until he dies. And if done right, he'll never leave that corner. That's Stingray. It's that easy. Next we'll be moving on to Spider. This stage is very much the same, except kind of how you get through it. So remember I mentioned with X that if he doesn't jump, you just power through the damage? Same thing with Zero. Except we're going to skip that little outcropping where the armor piece would normally be, because they don't appear at all for Zero. He gets no upgrades in this game. Fun fact is the ultimate armor cheat code for X and the black armor for Zero, they were both actually intended to get upgrades in this game, but because of, I think, timing of the production of the game, they actually opted to not give Zero an upgrade. So he still has Black Zero as a cosmetic change only if you do the cheat code, but it doesn't grant him anything in this game. In the later games, X4, or X5, I'm sorry, and X6, they do have actual buffs to Black Zero. In X5, he has Shock Buffer and Virus Buster, which allows him to kill the viruses. Shock Buffer allows him to be take about half the damage, roughly, and also reduces his knockback from when he's actually staggered by being hit. It reduces that time. Whereas in X6, what he gets is the same thing. He gets Shock Buff, but because there's no Virus Buster, instead what he gets is a flat damage increase. He gets a damage up 1, which is the same as the damage up that you could get in-game naturally. But they stack, so you can actually get a +2 damage on Black Zero. And this is Spider. There is a quick kill strat on Spider where, just like with X, where we try to hit him in the tree line, we can use the Kuenzon Spin Slash when he's in the trees, if he cooperates, to try to deal massive amounts of damage. If done right, you can actually bring him to 0, but it's really, really hard. I'll try to do what I can here. As you can see, it's not exactly the easiest thing to pull off. Now, unlike other bosses who take less damage from the Kuenzon versus his regular Jump Slash, Spider's the opposite. Kuenzon actually does 4 damage to him instead of the 3 damage that the Jump Slash does. So you're actually getting a damage increase using this weapon against him. After this, we go into Slash Beast, which again is about the same as it was with X. It's pretty set in stone the way the map is. The difference is, once again, the boss fight, which we're going to fight very much in the same way that we did in the way of Dragoon, where we're going to use SDC to minimize the boss's danger to ourselves. This mini boss is fought again differently because your weapons are different, but fire is still your best friend just like it was with X. So you'll see that as well. But we're also going to be using the Kuenzan. And that's the mini boss. Now, one thing to note when it comes to these transitions, since we got the long one here, is the whole map is on a global timer, and it has a repeating cycle. So it is possible to be either too fast and or too slow. And you can get what's called the perfect transition, the fast transition, where as soon as the boss is dead, it's loading you into this area because it shows the tunnel. And then there's the same thing that can happen in the reverse, where instead of hitting the frames that are constantly revolving into getting the fast cycle, you get the slow cycle, which causes the tunnel to appear almost about 4 seconds after you kill the mini boss, which slows you down quite a bit. And I'm getting some really bad mech mechanics here. This is why I normally opt to just run this without the mech, but I wanted to showcase mech movement for those that may be interested in using it. It is a lot faster for both X and Zero to not use the mech one bit. And that's that area. We got 2 more cannons to dodge, and we are golden. Next will be the boss fight. And you'll see how this boss is fought. We're going to use the SDC trick that I mentioned earlier on, and the same way that we fought Dragoon, we're going to be using that on this boss here. And that's Slash Beast. As you can tell, if done right and you practice the SDC just a little bit, that fight becomes virtually meaningless. He can do nothing to you. And the same is true once you get to the refights as well. Both Dragoon and Slash Beast are just as easy on the refights as they are here. Finally, we're going to be heading into Walrus. And Walrus, unfortunately, is one of those bosses who gets the immunity frames no matter how he takes damage, just like Owl. So we can't SDC him. SDC is actually slower. But there is a set in stone pattern that works for this fight and the refight, in which we use the fire attack and we can actually one cycle him. So hopefully we can showcase also the one cycle on the mini boss. Also, real quick fun fact, because I meant to say it earlier. For those that played X1, 2, and 3, this is Blizzard Buffalo from X3. He was the ice boss in that game. And when we get to the mini boss room, at the far right of it is actually Chill Penguin from Mega Man X1. So they kind of added the a little bit of love. You know, a little homage to the older games, which is really nice. So we go through this area very much the same as we did with X. The difference is we don't have lightning, but we do have a double jump, which is the Kuenbu. And we're actually going to use that to get this container here. If I don't mess it up, that is. Here we go. And that container is meaningless to us, but it's important if you're going to do a 100% category of this run. And what that container does is actually, if you were to game over, instead of game overing with only 2 lives, you'll game over with 4. So that's all it does, but we don't intend to ever game over in a speedrun, so it's virtually meaningless. This boss, we're going to hope that he plays nice and we can just get him to be stuck in the middle of the air with his claw open and just take all the fire damage in the world. Of course, I say that, he doesn't do it. And then, of course, I say that, he doesn't. And here's Chill Penguin right here. This is Chill Penguin. Still frozen. And now we're in the second half of the stage. And the reason why we save him for last, or at least why I prefer to save him for last, is simply because Shapuga. Shapuga is actually a crap move overall, but it does have its perks. And This is one of the few times it gets to shine, is because it allows you to get through this ice area a little bit more efficiently. And then there's the lightning attack, which is Raijin Geki. And once again, it's a little slower to kill those things. It's faster to do that. And if doing this fight right, we will only get one hit from Walrus, which is intended. So we take one hit on purpose. And then after that, we should take no more hits for the rest of this fight. And the setup for it is we're actually going to jump slash into him once, and then we're actually going to turn around, because if you notice with the fire attack, it actually starts at Zero's body, which means he's engulfed in fire before he swings the sword. So we're actually going to use that to our advantage to actually swing the swords pseudo backwards and still hit Walrus while removing any lag we could get by hitting his body during his invulnerability frames. He causes a lot of lag if you hit him while he's invulnerable. And this is how we set it up. Jump in once, turn around, fire. Just like that. And we do it again. We do it again. And now we continue to do this. One more fire, and that's Walrus. That simple. You just got to get used to the spacing and the timing. Takes a little bit of practice, but maybe 3 or 4 tries at most. After that, it's pretty easy. This game is not too hard, especially once you practice some of the strats. What gets difficult is movement. Movement is probably, like in most games, the biggest killer of your run. You can have the most god tier boss fights, but if your movement throughout the levels is dodgy at best, your time will suffer for it. So we're moving into the spaceport. This is the one and only time that we'll fight Colonel as Zero. We do not get the previous fight that X had. And the reason for that is because of cinematic plays instead, where Iris stops us from fighting. Good Colonel stage. So we're going to be using Ice against him just like we did with X, except the difference is it's a whole lot easier. We're going to be alternating between single jump and double jump Ice stabs just to maximize our damage and also avoid all of his attacks. Oh, I expected him to actually go to the middle there. If I was actually faster and didn't mess that up, and actually followed him, he would never have gone to the middle this entire fight. Which is actually pretty nice. He stays on screen the whole time. But that's Colonel. He's obviously a lot easier with Zero, especially alternating between double and single jumps. And upcoming now is going to be probably the second most annoying fight in the entire run. There is a strat to pretty much get an infinite combo here. And by infinite combo, I mean you fight it in such a way that you won't take any, or you won't take more than required amount of damage. And then there's a way where it goes completely sour and this fight sucks. So what we're going to try to do is, we're going to be fighting Iris. She's mad we killed her brother, which was the Colonel. And what we're going to do is we're going to do very short hops and spin slashes in an attempt to maximize our damage output. And also we're going to pinch her into a corner. Now we can't damage her body. what's going to happen is she's going to be in this purple mech suit, and very similar to the blue one that we got in the Storm Owl stage. We can't damage that. Instead, you see the orb that's in her hands right now? That's going to turn into a crystal, like a diamond, and that's what we actually have to damage, but it hovers above her. So we're actually going to use short hops to attack it, and the reason why short hops instead of large hops is because the crystal gauges its height based on how high you are as a character. So the lower we are, and unfortunately we can't duck in this game, but the lower that we are with our jumps, the lower the crystal will be when it takes damage and repositions itself, and it should be at a size to where our jumps and slashes will be just high enough to barely touch it, but still hit it. Let's see if we get that here.
Okay, I'll do it.
And that is not at all how that fight should go. But as you saw, I was trying to keep short hops until that one middle section where I really messed up, because I was trying to avoid damage, because those lasers hit really hard. Really, really hard. About maybe 3 or 4 of those and you're close to death. I think 3 you're close, 4 you are dead. So here we're going to go through the same route, and it's going to lead us to the general fight, just like we did with X, except with Zero. This is the worst fight in the game for us, by far. There's a reason why he's called RN General when it comes to the speedrun. Because what we want him to actually do, unlike with X where it doesn't matter what he does, it matters a lot what he does with Zero. And we want him to actually throw out his fists in that punching animation. That way we could stand on top of them and slash them in the face. If we do our normal ground slash, this in the face, we'll do a lot of damage. We're not going to SDC though, however. That's actually less damage and slower. We're just going to do this. And each frame that that sword is in his face will deal damage. Sort of like how the third slash works with Owl. Hopefully he'll give us a nice pattern and we can showcase him getting 4-shotted. If not, we'll just play the fight by ear.
Your true power.
I do not want to bring him too low, because then he won't do the fist. So maybe like another 2 or 3 hits, and then I'll have to stop. About here, and I'll wait. Just like that. That was nice. I was able to get the 3-shot. Now, that worked, like I said, because every frame that the sword is in his head, the more damage he takes. You want to get the fist as high as possible, so you want to jump to the very top ceiling when you see his knuckles turn. When you see the knuckles turn, you know he's actually going to do the rocket punch, and you're going to jump to the top of the screen, and you're going to climb on top of that fist. You can avoid the damage of the bubbles by using the Rakoa. You can also walk into them, so that way when you do that, when you get knocked back, you're still on the hand, because you want to maintain position on the hand at all times. Or you could try doing a short little hop like this, and that will reduce the amount of knockback that you get by a little bit. So now we're in the refights, and they're all almost about the same, barring 1 or 2 differences, but they're all about roughly the same. So I'm just going to bullet through these as fast as possible and get us to Sigma. The one thing I wanted to note, I don't think I mentioned it earlier, when it comes to Owl specifically and the Rakoa attack, every ball that hits him deals individual damage. So you want it to be as close to you as possible when you use the Rakoa. That way, more orbs hit him of those AoE bullets that you throw out. If you only hit him with 1 or 2, you don't deal a lot of damage. But if you wait for him to be almost within your hitbox and you use it and you hit him with like 4 or 5 of them, you effectively literally are tripling, quadrupling your damage output to him. This is the one fight that's a little different because we use lightning a little bit, but overall the fight mechanics are the same. You'll see the minor differences here. And that's all 8 refights. All we got left now is Sigma, which we should be done in about 4 minutes. There is a fast cycle we can get on Reaper Sigma, which is Sigma 1. It normally takes 6 shots to beat him. However, you're normally only able to get 2 shots per cycle. We're going to try to squeeze in a 3rd shot. If done right, instead of taking 3 rounds to beat Sigma 1, it's only going to take 2. So we'll try doing that here. And then Sigma 2, we're basically going to SDC until we get Sigma 3.
Are you ready for your final journey?
Did not get it. It should have looked like that, is what it should have looked like. But we didn't get it. Use Rakoa here to dodge that. Jump to the wall. Jump over. Rakoa. I was a little out of range there. If done right, you don't get a second laser phase, but it's that easy. Next, we're going to get into Sigma 3, which is a little bit more complicated. We're going to SDC Ground Sigma, the big face that's over here where I'm standing. And then for Gun Sigma, we're going to be doing a lot of the double jumps. But that'll be the fight. So sit back and I'll let you enjoy the fight.
Prepare to become space dust.
Not bad. An hour, 53 minutes, and 10 seconds to go through a whole tutorial for both routes. Pretty good. So we'll just do a small little talk over for the little bit of the credits here. There's really nothing important here too much. It's just a little bit easier on the audio. So that was Mega Man X4 for both X and Zero. As you saw, there were some differences between the two and how they play style. This game doesn't have a lot of glitches or skips or tricks. X has a couple of skips that he can do because of the charge fire, and Zero has the exploit of being able to deal a lot of damage by repeatedly using the first slash on some of the bosses. Unfortunately, it's not an end-all be-all solution here in this game. It doesn't work on Owl, it doesn't work on Walrus, it doesn't work on Mushroom, really, because he's always on the wall. However, if Mushroom's able to be on the ground, you can get some slashes off. So you saw in the refights where I used the lightning and he's stunned, and then I was able to get those double slashes off. If you're comfortable with it, you can actually get a little bit of SDC action in there, maybe get like 3 slashes in there instead of 2. It's possible, but he's not one of the main targets for that. Spider, you'll never get to SDC, unfortunately. However, the Kuenzan, if done right, can actually deal a boatload of damage. We weren't able to get it. It's a really hard trick to do, because what happens is when he goes into the tree, he actually kind of like disappears and reappears based on how the game engine wants him to appear. And you have to get a few factors lucky. You have to get lucky that A, you actually get him to appear where you want him to appear. That's first off. That dice roll of whether or not he's up there in the spot you want him to be in is a luck of chance. The last thing you got to worry about is, are you in the right position physically with Zero to be able to hit him repeatedly with the Coenzon as you go left and right like this on the inputs, while maximizing your damage without touching his body. If you wind up touching his body, you lose it and you fall down. The only reason why that works is because he doesn't get any immunity frames at some points when he's up in the trees. There's a specific window in which his iframes go away, and you can do that amount of repeated damage because they won't reactivate. It's a weird coding thing. So he could potentially be faster on Zero as opposed to X. General, you can lose upwards of a minute easy on Zero. With X, as you saw, it's pretty set in stone how much time you're going to take with him. The hardest fights in the game for X, in my opinion, is a badly fought Colonel can kind of go awry a little bit if you run out of ice, especially in Colonel 1 where you don't have the infinite capacity, could be a problem. And I would say probably maybe Stingray, because you're not using the ice on him. So maybe Stingray if you're in a bad position and you're not using your charge shots like you should be to destroy the Stingrays while you hit them. That could probably be a little bit tough. Other than that, as for X, a lot of it is routing. A lot of it is movement, and a lot of it is knowing when to jump, where to jump, and so on. Though that's true for Zero, Zero has less of the levels he has to face, allowing him to be a little bit more forgiving with his movement because he doesn't have to revisit and he doesn't get an extra boss fight. So because of that, he'll always be slower no matter what you do. It's just a point of Zero's run. In X5 versus and X6, there are a little bit more glitches that can be done as opposed to X4. X4 is a really solid game. It's very similar to that of X1, 2, and 3, where there's not so much a lot of fancy glitches that break the game. It's more of just about pure execution, which is probably why I love this game so much, is it's not a game that you actively cheese. You just kind of play through it, and it kind of just rewards you for playing well. But this has been X4. I hope you guys learned a little something from it. Hope you had fun with it. And we'll see you guys in the next one.